How's it going, everyone? Jesus here, aka Tyrant Dominus, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about Anchor. Anchor is the one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. And best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now by reading this ad. Honestly, Anchor is a very enjoyable platform to be on, listen on, and just a joy to be a part of this community. Anchor, come check us out. And welcome back to Reactioncast. It's your host Jesus, aka Tyrant Dominus, here to give you another series review. This time around, we're going to be talking about Archive 81. And we're not talking about Archive 81, the podcast. We're talking about Archive 81, the Netflix series. And so, like I mentioned, I originally listened to the entirety of Archive 81, the podcast. And it is one of my favorite found footage horror science fiction podcasts out there, and when they released Archive 81 as a show, I was intrigued, I was worried, because the world that's built around Archive 81 is so intriguing, so fun, and I was wondering how they were going to take a audio medium like Archive 81 and turn it into a show, and I feel like they did a good job. The main cast we follow is Dan, who's played by, oh shoot, I'm gonna mess up people's names here. The actor who plays Dan Turner is Modo Anthe. He's kind of the guy we're going to be following a lot. So I'm going to try to stay away from a lot of the the podcast similarities to the show, but it's interesting to note that how some liberties are taken from away from the podcast and its source material, just like any other source material. But yeah, we're following Dan, and then we're going to be following Melody Pendris, who's played by Dana Shihabi. So yeah, so we're going to be following these main two. These are like our main two like protagonists, our leads. And basically Archive 81 is this like weird horror sci-fi. It's this found footage. We're following Dan as he's trying to restore and archive some old tapes from the Visser building, who originally was recorded by Melody Pendris. And so we're watching these videos with Dan by Melody. So it's like this wall breaking thing, and it's really fun. And if you like I said, I'm gonna try to avoid it, but it's really fun also to listen to. There's a few extra characters that I was not expecting to see there, but I'm glad that we got to see some of the like Dan's best friend. I was not expecting Mark to be there, or not as much actually. You hear him a lot, but in the podcast, but he played a much more bigger role here, and I like that. Here's the good thing about the show. It takes a lot more visual. It's for a lot of people, if they don't like some of these how do I best describe it? So it's kind of like this horror mystery sci-fi, and it's a little bit slower paced than most people would maybe want, but the story's so well developed, I would say, that once you kind of get toward the end, you're like, oh my god, what did I just get myself into? Because you're just hinting in these little things of this borderline between like mental illness and reality. And when watching it, it's a lot. This is what's fun about visual media, is that you can like visually see everything, while in an audio format you kind of have to take it for what it is and kind of imagine it yourself. And it's not, some people have a very good imagination. I know a few people that actually don't, and it's hard for them to kind of picture some of these like stories. So the like audio dramas for them are a little bit more difficult for them to enjoy. And that's what's interesting when you kind of suggest things like this. So when you have such a wonderful story, like episode 1 itself, I'm not going to go too deep into it. Episode 1 takes like the first like 5, I think, episodes of the podcast, and does a really good job of just like showcasing the building and the people, the lore, just really building it up. Like it's just so intense. The soundtrack, this eeriness, like it's just so creepy. I remember all these audios. I'm guessing they used some of the kind of did like a remix of the original, and just gave this weird, like, ominous tune. It was so good. For anyone who maybe the palette for this is like this weird dark gray blue palette. Most of the time you almost hardly ever get outside of those tones unless you're like in a building, but it's a pretty dark series for sure. So it's not for some people like that. I know sometimes visual tones aren't for, like, some people just can't watch certain stuff because of the color, what is it called? Not the tinting. Oh my god, color correction is not really color correction. It's when there's a filter on it, but there's a gray filter a lot on this, but it kind of goes with the tone of the story and everything, and there's a lot of great story in it. It builds a lot, and it goes back and forth between kind of like modern day, the past, just exploring Dan trying to figure out what happened to Melody, and yeah, it's so eerie and good. It brings back memories of what the podcast was for me originally. For me personally, there's a couple fun things that I like remember from. It's been a while since I've listened to at least season one of Archive 81, the podcast, but they're quite memorable enough that there are certain like characters I was looking forward to seeing, and like seeing how they were depicted, and they were kind of cut, and I kind of understand why they were cut. Some of the finale, like for what the finale was for this series, like it's a very good way to kind of close this show, but it's well, I personally was hoping for kind of the more intense ending that happened on the podcast to lead into season 2, because the show does kind of end with a cliffhanger to season 2, which is like, okay. And I wasn't expecting it. I was like wondering how they were gonna do it. I when I saw it, like, oh my god, are they really doing this? But no, they're doing a completely different thing, and I'm like, oh, okay, because now I don't know what they're gonna be doing. But I just kind of wanted a little bit more, because I genuinely like the world and the lore that was built behind Archive 81, and I'm hoping for more of that from the other world, because it has that feeling of Stranger Things. It's just this weird otherworldly series that's so good if you enjoy these sci-fi horrors. Like, oh man, it's so good. It's so good. I don't know what more to say. It's just a fun show. I hope everyone gets a chance to watch it at least once. I understand if it's a little bit slower than you would expect, but it's worth the watch. You'll enjoy the culmination of everything. It's very fun, and if they continue what they are doing and they use some of the source material, because I have no idea what they're going to do now, because of what I know of season 2 of the podcast, I don't think they'll be going anywhere near that. So yeah, it's a whole new territory as far as I know. So I want to see what they're gonna do with Archive 81. But yeah, like, I look forward to seeing more and seeing where they'll take it. But man, it would have been so interesting to see some of the things and explore some of the other oddities that was the Visser building, some of the other residents. But I can understand where they took it, because there's only 8 episodes, which is very understandable, mostly for this type of show where it's a little bit slower and you kind of have to piece everything together of this weird like occult and this weird semblance of just weird fuckery. And yeah, it's so, oh man, I'm just wondering, yeah, if you guys are itching for more from Archive 81, if you watched it, you enjoyed it, let me know. If you want more, just go check out Archive 81, the podcast, because man, you're gonna love that, because it goes deeper into it, and it's so good. For sure, one of my top, it would be in one of my top 5 of horror sci-fi podcasts out there. So I enjoyed the show. It was for me personally, it's not there is an expectation for me, since I have already some prior knowledge. So I'm gonna give this one a solid, oh my god, I was gonna give this one a 9, but it left me as an individual hanging. I'm gonna give this one a solid 8. An 8. It's a great show. It could have been a little bit better. It could have been a little bit more. But I understand what they're going. And this is just for personal preference, because there is a couple cool things that I wish they explored it a little bit more. And I felt like it might have been rushed towards the end, and I understand why they had to kind of rush it. From lore and character, because they only had 8 episodes, so it kind of sucks that they couldn't explore a little bit more. But yeah, that's about it. I'm gonna give it a solid 8. But yeah, let me know what you guys thought of it. Did you watch it? Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? Are you gonna go listen to the podcast after this? Because I'm definitely gonna be re-listening to listening to some of those old episodes, because oh man, I do love the lore and some of the other characters that come about in the later seasons, because man, they're so crazy, kooky, and beyond words. And I was really hoping they were gonna introduce them later, but I don't know if we will. But yeah, like I said, thanks again for listening or watching. Until next time, see ya, see ya, see ya, see ya.